Okay.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. We got Oak joining us. We got Doc C rejoining us from the long time ago, back in the fall. We had him on last. Very excited to have that. Now, while I am excited, y'all should be too. Make sure you are liking the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails whenever we go live, which is, of course, Wednesdays and Fridays. If you have any comments, questions, anything at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section and we will engage those throughout the show. Other than that, I am super stoked to get this started. So let's get some intros right off the bat. Doc C, since it's been a while, I'm going to start with you, then we'll hit Oak, and then we'll go around the table. Give us a quick little blurb, 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff.
I'm a doctor in psychology, so I'm a psychologist as well as I teach criminal psych and abnormal psych at a couple of different universities. I have my own podcast as well, as you know. I do some work with law enforcement, and that's about it for now.
Well, that's a lot all in and of itself, I think. Oak, how about yourself? There's a little blurb on who you are, where you come from.
Yes, thanks, Chance. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel from the United States Army. Did 23 years on active duty, combat arms officer, and wrote my first book about 3 years ago. And now I'm a keynote speaker. Live here in Daytona Beach, Florida. It's tough to live here, but somebody has to.
Yeah, that's a rough one. We had snow a couple of days ago, actually, up here in Canada. So
that's why I live here.
Yeah, no doubt. Shaun, how's life out in the mountains?
Things are good out here. Looking forward to the conversation, seeing where it goes.
Gonna be a good one. So I have a general theme, general concept that I want to hit on today. We're going to be talking a bit about service, but generally about society as a whole. So I'm going to put this first video up, and then maybe get your guys' thoughts, and here it goes.
Anthropologist Margaret Mead was asked by a student what she considered to be the first sign of civilization in a culture. The student expected Mead to talk about fishhooks or clay pots or grinding stones. But no. Mead said that the first sign of civilization in an ancient culture was a femur that had been broken and then healed. Mead explained that in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, you die. You cannot run from danger, get to the river for a drink, or hunt for food. You are meat for prowling beasts. No animal survives a broken leg long enough for the bone to heal. A broken femur that has healed is evidence that someone has taken time to stay with the one who fell, has bound up the wound, has carried the person to safety, and has tended the person through recovery. Mead went on to say, helping someone else through difficulty is where civilization starts. We are at our best when we serve others.
Bam. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on this, and I do recognize that there is some people that challenge that thought and say all these things, but I want to get your thoughts on generally service being the kind of beginnings of civilization. Doc C, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
It's interesting. I remember Margaret Reed had that famous quote, I don't want to teach children how to think, what to think, but how to think. That was one of her famous quotes. And I think service has been around for centuries. We've seen it in the Greek civilization, the Roman civilization. We saw it really big when it came back around with St. Francis of Assisi, if you remember him. In the Catholic world, that was a big movement back then. And in the world of psychology, my field, we've seen it go up and down, ebbs and flows, where all of a sudden you put them in prisons, you lock them up if they have psychosis. So no, you put them in a really nice facility, expose them to nature. You do a lot of arts and crafts to help them out. And service is big in that world, if this is what you're going after. I'm not sure exactly if that's the angle you're heading for, but I see service has been around for centuries. Religion has always been a big advocate for service. Psychology using the ability to go out and help others to overcome your own sadness and anxiety can also be a big benefit. I'm not sure that's what you were going for, though, Chance, but I'll throw it out there for
Generally, no, well, don't worry, we'll get there. Oak, what are your first thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think she's absolutely right. I mean, and just like Doc was saying, I mean, just go back to religion. I'm Catholic, and one of the things that we teach is that Christ came and it was all about, he came as a servant, not as a king, not as a royalty. He came as a servant. And so that theme kind of goes through there, but I think it even started before that. And I'm a huge believer. If that's not why we're here, to help other people, then why are we on this earth? I question that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, what are your first thoughts?
Well, I like it. It's an interesting clip and it's an interesting thought. I've never really looked at it that way before. And so as I was watching it, my thoughts were this. Perhaps that's the hallmark of civilization, where a individual is given enough care to heal a bone, where a person is given enough care to thrive. So perhaps caring for someone is the first hallmark of civilization, but I think there's nuance to it. And so, I jumped in my little hot tub time machine in my head and bounced back to Egypt, having stood there in front of the pyramids and all of that good stuff. As I was standing in Egypt, I started looking around me and thinking, man, I wonder what it was like here 7,000 years ago, etc. And so I want to believe that there was a lot of selfless service, but I don't think there was. I think that there was a lot of obligated service. I think there was a lot of forced servitude. I think there was a lot of slavery. And so if you're forced to help someone heal a bone, I think that's different than wanting to heal someone's bone, wanting to serve them out of goodness, out of being a civilized human. So forced through servitude versus wanting to, that's maybe where I draw the line between civilization really becoming civilized.
That's a good thought. And it's interesting because I was thinking along the lines of even further, if you go back into, the origins of tribal societies, and you're thinking about just smaller groups of people working together. And as I was thinking about it, there was a number of general themes that kind of kicked out in my head. One of them was service to the tribe, right? If everybody brings something together, then we can all work together. But there were other pieces to it, like leadership, and the fact that there's got to be somebody with a general idea where you're going to go. There's got to be humility. There's got to be multiple things in here. And I'm wondering what you guys think would be the, I guess, maybe top 3 or top 5 kind of general themes that, bring people together in those tribes. What do you think? I'm going to start with Oak. What do you think?
Yeah, I think one of them, right off the top of my head, is trust. I think everybody's got to trust everybody else that they're going to do those things that they're assigned, that they're good at. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, leadership is one of those, and take it one step further. If we're talking about in a tribe, I'm hoping that it's a servant leader who understands that it's about the tribe, not just about themselves. And probably if I had to pick another trait, it would probably be empathy. That you can, not that you feel sorry for somebody or that you let them slide on things, but you understand that every day somebody's different. There's things going on in people's lives every day that you got to take into account. Again, it doesn't mean you let them slide. You don't feel sorry for them, but you take that into account. So I think those things: trust, servant leadership, some type of leadership. I hope servant leadership and empathy.
Yeah, I like those. Doc C, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I want to expand a little bit on what Oak said there. And by the way, Oak, I've never met you before, so thank you for your service. But it's interesting when he talks about trust. It's fascinating because it reminds me a little bit of Ayn Rand and the concept of altruism. Do we really do things altruistically, or do we do it for some benefit of ourselves? And when Oak was mentioning trust, I think there's a lot of people who will do it selflessly and in some capacity. And in others, it's for survival, right? If you go back to Chance's idea of thousands of years ago in the tribe, and they had to trust each other to survive, because if you didn't, it'd be problematic for everybody involved. And of course, there's always theories about what happened millions of years ago or hundreds of thousands of years ago. What were they really like? Did they actually want to be together? Was it really about trust? Did they really trust each other? Was it just more efficient because they can get things easier with food and protect their home base, I guess you can call it? And it's interesting. I don't know. I guess I'd probably take this a different route. just because I threw Ayn Rand in there. But you know me, Chance. You invited me, and trouble comes your way.
I remember what it's like. Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
Well, kind of in line with what Doc is saying, what I was thinking of or picturing in my mind's eye was, going back several thousand years ago, we'll call it to caveman days. And, kind of late evening, early nighttime, fire, cave, clan, sitting around it, me approaching it, wanting something. Otherwise, I wouldn't approach it. If I didn't need anything, I wouldn't head towards that fire. I wouldn't head towards a new clan. I wouldn't head towards the new tribe. I'd hang out elsewhere, safer. If I felt safer by myself than with the tribe, I'm going to hang out by myself. But now back to that several thousand years ago, approaching that fire, I'm probably approaching it because I need help.
Yeah.
And so as I approach it, if I yelled out, "Hey, is it okay if I approach?" and they yelled back in a foreign language or in a language that I don't understand, well, there's the first sign of what I'm up against or in for or what it's about to be all about. Because if they spoke my language, things would be a whole lot easier. But the moment that they don't speak my language, it's another stop gap moment where I've got to think about, oh, do I continue proceeding? I'm entering into now a foreign tribe, and I'm entering into something that's going to take me some time to evolve in. Maybe I'll just turn around and head back and not have to deal with all of this nonsense. These are the kind of things that I believe would have been occurring back then. Now, why would a person keep moving forward into a tribe that doesn't speak their language, that they know nothing about? It's probably to feel safer. And it's probably to gain access to resources. And it's probably, if someone has a future mind, they're looking for a mate and they're looking for a family at our primal level, and they're looking for support of that family. So all of those things that I just mentioned are way more difficult when you're out there on the edge of the wilderness all by yourself. When you're in a tribe, it just becomes much more easy. And so whatever attracts a person into a tribe, whatever puts them into a group is different then than it is now in the level of intensity. But I still believe that today, as I approach a different tribe or a different clan, I'm observing their language and wondering, do I belong with them? Am I willing to put up with this, etc.? So in our modern world, we have the luxury of standing back and observing tribes and seeing if they feel right for us. Whereas back then, life was a bit more intense and you didn't have that luxury. And a person would have had a much clearer understanding of these things, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But I think, you said it, they join the clan because it's easier, but it also joining that clan also brings more difficulty in their life as well, especially if what you're saying, they don't speak the language, they don't know anybody. That adds difficulty. So you're absolutely right. The advantage must have been huge for them to make that step, because it certainly would have been easier not to have to go through all that, even with all the problems they had not being part of that clan.
Absolutely. Doxy, you got any additional thoughts on this?
You want me to stick with the tribe thing, or you want me to switch a little bit?
Carry on, man. Whatever your thoughts are. What are you thinking?
I'm bringing it back to the comment I made to Oak a minute ago about thank you for your service and thinking about service and military. And I don't want to go too far out of my lane because you guys are the military guys, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, of course. But you can see there's a lot of service there, but there's also a quid pro quo, right? You're providing service for something in return. I see it in families a lot too. There's an advantage. Kind of going off of Shaun's theme right here. I wouldn't, like he said, I wouldn't approach a camp if I didn't want something. And we always want something. We want a family for a reason, right? We want children for a reason. We want a wife for a reason, or a husband, whatever it may be. And it's not bad. It's not bad. But the psychological component of service, this is where I was going to change it a little bit, is interesting because it provides a lot of benefits for people to be able to serve someone else and to not always be about yourself, And then, of course, you get into the philosophical debate of, isn't it still about you because you're getting something out of it, even though you're doing something selfless for someone? And we can argue that too. But it does provide a lot when you stop always about me, 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 and actually do something. If you do something for your children, I mean, I don't know if any of you gentlemen, I know some of you gentlemen have children, and I've seen it on Instagram as well. And I could tell providing something for them as a father gives you something back,
Sure.
right? That's a service that you really, it gives a lot of reward to be able to serve your children in some capacity. I'll leave it there for now.
100%. And this actually goes down the route I kind of wanted to go, which is interesting that for some reason you and I are in line here, Doxy, as we're usually on. But the concept of, service and being able to gain something from that, you have to give away quite a bit in order to gain that, though. And especially for the military, or if you're thinking about tribal societies that still have rites of passage and requirements in order to be part of that tribe, you have to give up quite a lot in order to, quite a lot of what you think is a lot at that time, to gain those things through mutual trust, which is built upon the shared hardships that you have to go through military training and all this other stuff. So I'm wondering, without military training, or back in the days of tribal societies and things like that, even now, how do we build that trust with other people so that we can create more tribes, more people that we can serve and also give service? How do we build that trust with other people? Oak, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, I talk a lot about trust. I'm a huge believer when I talk about 360-degree trust. So it's not one way. It's, the person leading, the person you lead has to trust you, or even if you don't even take it into the leader, just somebody that you're working with has to trust you. So it's that 360-degree trust. And I think there's a couple ways to build that, even without the shared hardships of basic training, all of the things that we do in the military to bring that trust out. I think number one is you got to set the example for people. I had a friend one time who told me, he said, Oak, men and women want to be led by better men and women than they are. And the way you prove that is by setting the example, doing the things that, never asking somebody to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. When you do it, with morals, ethics, within the law, all those things that you got to do as a leader. So I think number one is you got to set the example. And number two, the key piece that I don't see a whole lot of today with leaders is you got to show people you care. Get to know people, open up, ask them personal questions, let them ask you personal questions, because you don't trust somebody you don't know. Sorry, that doesn't work. So I think those two things, I think you got to set the example in things that you do, and then you got to get to know the people. People have to get to know each other before they trust each other.
That makes a lot of sense. Doc C, thoughts on this?
Oh, I completely agree with Oak in regards to developing trust as a psychologist. It's one of our, I think, most important factors for us to be successful as a psychologist in helping individuals get better in whatever situation they're in. And if you don't have trust, it doesn't matter who I am. I could be Freud's second cousin, Jung's uncle. It doesn't really matter. I'm not that old, but either way, you know what I mean. And it doesn't matter. I could be graduate from Harvard, which doesn't mean as much anymore, but I could be a graduate from Harvard in psychology, and still it doesn't do anything if they don't trust you. And that's one of the biggest things. And psychologically, it's a huge, huge thing for people to get better, is having a strong support system, social network that they can trust somebody they can actually share things with and not be judged, not be evaluated, and just listen to. And I think that's a huge component of it all. I just wanted to highlight one thing. You mentioned, Chance, a minute ago about kind of like an opportunity cost. When you serve somebody, you're giving up something. And it reminded me of, as a father, you have to give up certain things in your life when you have a family. You have to give up freedom to a certain degree, free time that you had, things that you wanted to do, money has to be redirected. So there's a lot of freedom that goes away with that. but the rewards are pretty big when it comes to service. It doesn't relate to trust, but just two separate tracks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Service and trust, I think they are separate tracks for sure, but they're kind of tied at the hip for sure, at least in my world. And funnily enough, we're talking about trust, and I think that you can trust someone in a split second, or you can trust someone several years later. And so that's something that takes a long time to learn. At least it took a long time for me to learn. And I still learn by looking backwards several decades ago and thinking about my relationships and how I could have executed on a faster trust relational basis, or whether I should have slowed the roll down on that trust relationship basis. But here's the good news. As you're growing up, you make mistakes. You trust the wrong people, you trust the right people. Along the way, you learn who to trust and who not to trust. And then, right about the time you think you've got it figured out, your life changes and you still don't have it right. And so, we never get it perfectly right. But what we're supposed to be doing through life is refining the ability to get better at getting right. And so at 60 now, I've met enough people in the world. I know enough things about the world that, well, I already dig on Doc Carlos, or geez, he wouldn't be a repeat guest as many times as he has, but I don't know Oak. And so here's how it works in my world. As soon as I locked eyes with Oak, within the first second, just before he went live, I thought, I like this guy. And I don't know why I thought that. I just trusted my instinct, which has not steered me too wrong. Otherwise, I wouldn't be breathing right now. And so I liked Oak right from the get-go. And then I thought, Oak McCullough, what a freaking cool name to grow up with. You know, like your name sets the tone for your life to some degree. And so if your name can set the tone for your life, then certainly all the things attached to you, what you wear, how you stand, how you breathe, how do you breathe with your mouth open or your mouth closed? All of these little telltale signs, they are a masterpiece of who Oak is, or it's finger painting as to who Oak is. And that's in the eye of the beholder. That's for me as a longtime artist of assessing people to think, that's a good work of art. Or if I haven't been in the game, if I've been a dimwit and not paying attention to the world around me, well, all I see is finger painting and it's confusing and I don't know if I'm ever going to like Oak. So it's my job in life to get better at frickin' life. And so all of the mistakes that I've made have got me to a point where pretty quickly, bam, I like Oak. Now my job is to figure out why I like Oak. And then it's why I don't like Oak. And then it's what can I put up with and what do I want to get rid of? Is Oak going to be around for a long time? And that's what tribes are, man.
Yeah.
The dude who walks in from beyond the campfire, I might not be the ringleader at that fire, but I'm probably a guy who has a say. And as Oak is walking up on us, I'm eyeballing Oak and figuring out stay or go. Stay. Now I'm eyeballing him as he's at the fire. Stay or go. And that's how life is, man. I think a lot of people forget that that's kind of how we were raised. And it's only been a couple of centuries that we kind of stopped doing that. And I do believe it's in us, in all of us, to pay attention to the world around us and make these decisions on who's who in the zoo, whether we're aware of it or not. We're always doing it. And I think our job is to get better at being observant as to that's what we do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oak, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely right. I think, we all trust our instincts, or we should, because most people's instincts are pretty good. And you make snap decisions, kind of like on setting the example. Somebody who walks up and they got good posture, they're dressed right, they're for whatever the occasion is, they're able to do the things that they're supposed to do. Then you automatically start liking them. And then like he said, you really do then at that point, every time something new happens, then you kind of reevaluate and add to it or subtract from it. And the huge part of that is that you can lose that trust as quickly as somebody gave it to you. And so you got to be really careful about that. But yeah, I absolutely agree that we do it subconsciously, whether we know it or not. That's part of the bias, and we all have bias. Anybody who tells you they're not biased is lying to you. Okay, we are all biased. We were all raised a certain way. We like certain things. Sorry, that's just fact of life. There's nothing wrong with being biased. You need to know that you're biased and what your bias is, so that it doesn't affect your decision making to a negative point. But absolutely, we're all making those decisions all the time.
Yeah, 100%. Doxy, thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's interesting when Shaun mentioned Oak's name. I was thought about your name, Chance, because to trust somebody, you have to take a chance. So it's kind of funny that way, and you do. And just like Shaun said, sometimes you don't have a lot of time to sit around and try to profile somebody and get their background and their biography to figure it out. You only have a few seconds to determine certain things, and you have to take a chance if you're going to trust that individual. You're going to have to take a chance on almost anything in life in regards to trust. And it comes with service. I'll tie those two together. Shaun mentioned they're both connected and they are to a certain degree, right? Service as well. If you're going to do something for somebody, you hope there's a benefit there. And in some cases, like I mentioned, there's a hope there's something in return. There's a hope that it would do what it's supposed to do for that individual, make their day a little bit better, if that's what the service is all about. Just depends on what you're serving. But as always, it's a chance. We take a chance in everything in our lives.
Yeah. And I have heard that millions of times. Don't just go take a chance. I'm like, yeah, got it.
Is there a history to that name, Chance, or no?
So there is, but we don't have time to go into it because it would take the whole podcast. But I have another video just in line with what we're talking about, so I'm going to put that up, and then we're going to carry this conversation on. So keep your thoughts at the top of your head. Here we go.
The man who never fell has no glory. The man who fell and got back up, that's where his glory is. The man who fell 20 times and got up 21 times, that man has even greater glory.
Wow.
That man has more courage, way more courage than the guy who was so strong from birth that he never fell. There's no glory in that.
So I bring this one up because I think that as you guys are talking about, sometimes you have to take a chance, and then more than likely, you're going to make mistakes throughout. And I think that's a key proponent in everything we're talking about here in terms of tribes and trusts and, service, is that it's gonna bite you in the butt sometimes. So I want to get your guys' thoughts, not only on the video, but on how that applies to what we've been talking about so far. Oak, coming to you. What do you think?
Absolutely. There are no perfect people in this world. Sorry, I keep trying to convince my wife I am. You'd think after 37 years I could do that, but no. We're all going to make mistakes, and that's okay. As long as we're learning from those mistakes. As a leader, my philosophy has always been this: I don't care if you made a mistake, because we're all going to make mistakes. What I care about is, what did you do after you made the mistake? Did you try to hide it, or did you blame somebody else, or did you own up to it? Hey, boss, I made a mistake, and this is how we're going to fix it. So you get back up and you say, we're going to fix it. Now we got to learn from that mistake so that we don't do it again, but we move forward from that mistake. Okay, let's learn from it, move forward, and we'll go from there. But as long as you do that, I think you're right, and I absolutely agree. I mean, we're all gonna fall down. And the ones that are successful, people who are successful, are the ones who have the courage to get back up and try something else. One of my favorite generals in the United States Army is General Hal Moore, from that movie We Were Soldiers Once and Young, that Mel Gibson played. And I actually got to listen to him talk one time. I actually got to listen to him talk twice, but the first time I listened to him talk, he came up with this analogy that I absolutely love and I absolutely agree with. He said, when things go wrong, and things are going to go wrong, it isn't like baseball. It isn't one strike and you're out. If you try something and it doesn't work, try something else. And if that doesn't work, you try something else. And if that doesn't work, you try something else. And you just keep trying until it's successful. And I think if we could all have that attitude, I think we'd be all better off.
Yeah, I totally agree with that one. Doxy, thoughts?
Yeah, not much I can add to it. Oak said, I think he hit the nail on the head when to add to what that gentleman I thought didn't add to it is when you fall 20 times, as he mentions, and you get up, you have to learn from it. If you've fallen 20 times, is it the same reason? All 19 out of the 20 makes a difference if you
Yeah, there
haven't
you go.
started adapting here. So that's the only thing I was missing a little bit from that. But Oak already covered that part. So I guess the only thing I would add would be everything I've seen when I've interviewed Olympic athletes, professional athletes, and special forces, and Sean knows about this already. That's one of the things that they have. If one of the biggest things is cognitive flexibility. If something goes wrong, they have to figure out how to get there. Their eye stays on the prize, as Paul would say in the Bible. If you're a Christian, the eye stays on that prize, and you have to keep going towards it. And no matter what stops you. And it's kind of interesting because I don't even think, if I was to ask special forces, and this might be a question to Sean, some of them that I know of don't even view it as courage. They just view it as, I just got to get the job done. This is all I'm doing. I'm not different than anybody else. I'm not braver. I just have to do the job and get it done. And when I talk to some of the athletes, it's the same thing. It's not even looked at as courage. It's looked at, I just got to get the job done. This is what I was supposed to do, and I have to do it. They don't view it. Other people outside view it that way, and it doesn't mean it isn't. It's just interesting when you look at their mindset. That's it for me.
Interesting. Yeah. Sean, thoughts?
Well, I think you're right on the money, Doc. I was actually going to launch into what you've just kind of handed me the softball on. That's for sure. And it's levels to the game. Maybe is what it is perhaps the best way I can explain it. So when I was listening to that video, the old cowboy there, who, by the way, must have been wearing a different hat when he kept falling over, because the hat he was wearing was looking pretty tight and not too dusty, by the way. It was looking pretty Hollywood, just saying. So moving on from that, when he was relaying his story about falling down and getting up, what I heard in the background was this. Oh, really? Did you guys catch that from the peanut gallery in the video? Oh, really? Like it was a new revelation that if you fall down, you've got to get back up. I think what it is the idea as they look at that old timer with his persona, they can't imagine. Probably he's I don't know who he is, but he must be some character who's accomplished some things, and perhaps there's someone in the peanut gallery that just couldn't imagine that their hero or this figure that they're looking up to had somehow fallen down a bunch of times. I think that as people, we consider the falling down as a catastrophe. And how could that guy have ever fallen down? How could he have ever faced catastrophes? He's a hero. Heroes don't face catastrophes. Catastrophes are what make freaking heroes.
Yep.
All 20 times. How about 20,000 times fall down and get up 20,001 times? That's what it is in my head. When you have failed enough that failure isn't a catastrophe and failure is the thing that you now pursue, which is what I do, pursue failure, then you know you've got it right. When you can say, I love pursuing failure. If someone in the peanut gallery says, oh, really? It's my opportunity to explain to them how I've lived my life. And that's the opportunity for all of us to explain to everyone around us this idea that the falling down and getting a bit dusty is not a catastrophe. A dusty failure is not a catastrophe. A messy failure is not a catastrophe. They're all opportunities to become heroic sometime in the future. And you don't know that right now because you're still brushing the dust off your knees and thinking that fall hurt a little bit. But it's all of the things that you're doing now that aren't working out that you'll be able to, in the future, look back and realize that that's what made you. You've worked out in the future because of the failures that you're making today. So don't ever catastrophize a failure. Just understand that there's a lesson in it that's going to create a better you in the near future.
This is it's quite interesting too, because even the catastrophe is an opportunity to learn, to get better, to utilize, and that it's not just small things that we can learn from, but it's the massive failures. It's the crashing crashing down into the waves kind of thing. And interestingly enough, my old family doctor that we had the boys see quite regularly, and then he retired. He used to, every time we'd go in there, the boys would have like band-aids on their knees and they'd have scrapes and cuts and all kinds of things all over their body. And he would applaud us every time we came in. He was just like, man, this is what I like to see. Young boys with skin knees. And we were like, okay, aren't you like a doctor? Are you supposed to keep these boys healthy? And he's like, no, this is the key to this is the fact that the boys are exploring the world. They're hurting themselves. Like that's what you want them to do because that's how they're going to learn and how they're going to grow into men. And so I'm wondering how much you apply that.
Sorry, Chance, I got to jump in because I didn't really fully explain myself to the degree that is going to set you up for this softball, I believe. And that is because Dr. C had asked, like, what is it about special forces or what is it about maybe guys like me that operate a bit differently? And it's because in my head, I'm Lieutenant Dan. And Chance, back in the day, I'd called him Captain Dan Derp. But Lieutenant Dan, when he's up on that boat, on the shrimp boat, up in the tower, and the storm of the century is coming in, and he's yelling into the wind, "Is that all you've got? Bring it." That's how I feel. Is that all you got? Bring more. Bring the insanity squared. That's what I love, man. I love facing the bonkers chaos. Because if I'm gonna fall down and get dusty, I want to skid for 100 meters and just be a pile of dust and then get up. I love a notable failure. The micro failures are almost inconsequential. The big failures that really, really, really sting, where you had all your heart in it and it fails miserably, that's when you're up in the shrimp tower yelling at the storm. Is that all you've got? You've got to have some context in your life to be able to manage catastrophes. If you were raging into the storm, then you understand storms. But if you're in your house with your umbrella, with shaking because there's a little bit of light rain outside and you don't want to get outside, well, you don't understand storms. You don't understand failure to the extreme levels of what it can bring. So if your world is so small that you haven't raged into the storm, then there's a lot of catastrophes around you. And I would encourage anyone to expand their footprint of suck so that failure is recategorized.
Yeah, absolutely. Doc C, we go to you. What do you think on that?
It reminds me a lot of Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero's Journey. I think I might have mentioned it to you guys before in the past. It's a theme that we see over and over again, a lot of movies and books. I was just telling it to my daughter the other day. It's the ability of an individual who doesn't want to get thrown into something, that gets thrown into something, and we all go through it, whatever it is in our lives, whether we lose our jobs, it could be divorces, whatever it may be, and you get thrown in and you overcome all these odds, just kind of like Shaun said, when you're screaming against the storm. But if you think of Harry Potter, if you think of Frodo from Lord of the Rings, whichever one of those fantasy books you like, it's the same story over and over again. Whether it's Rocky, it's the hero's journey going through this time of tribulation. You kind of get forged in the iron, as they would say, and then you come out a person that Shaun mentioned, you come out different. It's who you are today based on all those challenges that you overcame in your life. And who you are today is based off a lot of those, or the ones you didn't overcome, and the ones you didn't learn from also makes who you are today too, unfortunately.
Yeah. Good or bad.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oak, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, life is about experiences. And the more experiences you have, the more you can learn from them. And the more you push yourself, like Shaun said, the more you push yourself, that's when you learn how far you can go and what you can tolerate. And I see, I played baseball, basketball, football in high school. I played baseball in college. I was, through the Army and a lot of physical stuff. So every time I did something, I learned a little bit more of how much further can I push it? Is that really, am I hurt, or is that just a little bit of pain? You learn those things, but the only way you learn those is to go through it. Somebody can't explain that to you. The only way you're going to get there is to not shy away from those experiences. And you're going to fail. You're going to get hurt. You're going to do those. It's going to hurt you both physically and mentally and emotionally sometimes. But again, as long as you learn from it and you get back up and you try again, try something else from what you just learned, then you're going to get better and better all the time.
Yeah. And I want to take this kind of back to where we started in the concept of, serving one another in that you're going to serve people and it's going to be a mistake, right? There's going to be times where you do something for somebody else and they're going to take advantage of it. And there's going to be lots of times where you will try your absolute best, as Shaun says, put your heart into it, and it's just going to blow up in your face. And that's actually a good thing, but only upon reflection, I think. In the moment, it's very hard to really take and be like, yeah, this is a great thing that's happening to me and my heart is exploding. This is fantastic. That's difficult. Not saying it's impossible, but it's difficult. So I'm wondering how you guys see this in terms of, bettering yourself or bettering your own concept of service through those mistakes and the reflections upon them. What do you think? Doxy, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Caught me in the middle of thought there. I was thinking a lot about relationships. So when you get into a relationship, you both plan, hopefully, to serve each other in some capacity, even if you're just dating, to marriage. And there's risk and chance has to be taken there. And sometimes you get cheated on. Sometimes they break up with you. And I guess what I was thinking before that is I was trying to blend these two thoughts together, because I know we have a lot of analogies with military and sports. And I'm thinking it was challenges that we all go through life anyway that we have to overcome to become a stronger person. And if you have somebody who has cheated on you, that could limit your ability to find trust again in the future relationship. And that could be a huge challenge. So being able to overcome that and trusting again could be huge. Again, in my line of work, if you're a victim of rape, if you're a victim of sexual assault, that's going to be something you have to overcome to be able to trust human beings again. If you're a victim of child abuse, again, to be able to trust and go out, to be able to serve. Because like you said, Chance, when you serve somebody, you are taking the risk of being exploited. And sometimes that does happen. So it's interesting to see it in that scope. I just kind of threw it at you a little bit in a different light, because I think we do have a lot of challenges in life, independent of other things that we've mentioned. Lose your job, that's going to be something. If you lose your job and you're single, maybe some of you guys will know that is not the same as losing your job with a family. It's just not. Your world really gets rocked and you have a lot of responsibility. And then when you overcome it, sometimes we might downplay, minimize how much we've overcome and realize, oh, shoot, I made it through that storm and came out the other side okay. Hell, I came out better than I was before. And a lot of times we don't see it. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge our own victories as human beings, to look at our past and rewrite that story a little bit. Because sometimes we don't look at ourselves as a hero per se. We look at ourselves as a failure of things we didn't accomplish, and not look at the things we did accomplish over the past, whatever it is your life has been, 40, 50 years.
That's a fantastic point. Oak, thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, as we were talking before everybody else jumped on, and we were talking about the importance of reflection and how that's how we get better. That's how we learn. Experience doesn't teach you anything. It's the reflection on that experience that teaches you the lessons that you need to get better at it. And so, I'm a huge believer in reflection on multiple levels, things that you do as a group, reflect on those. What were we supposed to do? How can we get better? But I'm also a huge proponent of reflecting in my personal life. Every night before I go to bed, that's one of the last things I do is I say, okay, well, what did I do today? How can I get better? Even if I was successful at something, it doesn't mean I can't get better at it. So I think that's the thing, that if you look at successful people, it's not they're not satisfied with success. They want to get better than that. And the way you do that is through reflection. That's reflection on the experiences that are going to drive that ability to get better at whatever it is that you do, and whatever that is. And one piece about that, you mentioned that, sometimes you're going to take chances on people and it's not going to work out. After I retired from the Army, I ran a food bank for a couple of years. Yeah, can't get much different than that. Combat arms, food bank, that's about 180 degrees. But we did these food handouts, and sometimes people would show up in a brand new Cadillac Escalade getting food. And I had workers who kind of judged, and they said, well, why are they here? And I said, first of all, it's not our place to judge. You don't know what situation they're in. Just like Doc said, they may have just lost their job, and yeah, they may have that car, but they may owe on it. But I told them, this is what I told them to kind of get their mindset around it. To feed the needy, sometimes you got to feed the greedy. And I think as a servant leader, you got to understand that you're going to serve a lot of people, and most of it is going to be good, but there's going to be some bad to it too. But that doesn't detract from the good that came out of the people you helped. So that's just my take on it.
Love that. Shaun, thoughts on this?
That's great, man. Serve the needy. You got to serve the greedy sometimes. I've never heard that before. That's super legit. I like it. Yeah, to your point, Oak, I think coincidentally, like just today, I put up a post this morning in my Instagram feed, and the general theme of my post, it was because I'd read something by Jerry Seinfeld last night. It was a quote that he put up, and I can't remember the entire quote. I actually quoted him in my post this morning, but essentially I'm going to paraphrase it to this, that, he knows a lot of rich people, and they're really unhappy because they haven't done much in their life in the pursuit of mastery. Pursue mastery is what Jerry Seinfeld has just recently started saying. Now, I think that's coming out of, he's also just recently started pursuing himself the subject of stoicism. He's really enamored with Stoic philosophy recently. Now, I'm talking like I'm a big fan of Jerry Seinfeld and I know what he's doing on the daily. I don't. I like Jerry, but it's we're not holding hands. I mean, these are just random observations over the last several days, and it just happens to align with Jerry Seinfeld, where he stated that people that he knows are miserable because they're not pursuing anything in life. They're not pursuing any mastery. They're not pursuing mastery of themselves, and they're not pursuing mastery of a Japanese tea ceremony, or how to make the best frisbee in the world, or how to throw a ball further than they've ever thrown before, how to ... anything, everything. Seek betterment, more mastery in the moment of whatever the moment is that you're in right now. And so his statement is that it's been his newish secret to life that he now pursues mastery. So what does that mean to everyone out there? In my post, I put a simple sentence, and it kind of goes along these lines. You either let life shape you, or you shape life. And those are two binary positions. You're either victim to it, or you're either forcing or shaping or guiding or creating or managing or leading your way through your own life. So you either sit back and let it happen, or you get involved and start making it better. And so I know those are really two simple binary situations, but I believe them to be true, man. There's a lot of nuance and granularity in there that we can inject, but at the end of the day, you're either letting it happen to you, or you're focused on understanding that this grand experiment that's in front of our nose, it's for us to shape. It's for us to make good or bad today. It's for us to either learn or not today. It's for us to either fall down and lay down or stand back up. So once you know that you're in charge of your game, start getting skillful at it. Don't just let Monopoly happen to you. Freaking understand the board and start strategizing and being tactical about, don't go to jail. Go directly past jail and make $200 or whatever it is in life that you have locked in as a goal. If you want it, go make it happen. Be skillful in life. Just don't be party to life.
Mm. This is a great point, and I have another video. I'm going to put it right in here. It's right in line with what we're talking about, and I think the biggest issue is that most people allow their feelings to get involved when it comes to what they want. So I'm going to put this video up, and then we'll get your thoughts on that. So here we go.
You that bad an athlete that you have to feel great to perform well? I ask athletes that question all the time because I want them to look and say to me, yeah, I have to feel perfect, I have to feel just right, I have to be the dominator. No, you're not that bad. You can get it done. Feeling good is overrated, and a lot of it at times is your belief system that you've got to have the confidence in yourself that you can get it done, whether you have your B game, your C game, your D game, because you're a competitor and you're going to fight, you're going to claw, you're going to battle in getting it done. And that's what it's about.
So on that note, I want to apply it not just to sports, but to life in general. And I think that a lot of people let their feelings get in the way. What do you guys think? Oak, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in it. I think that a lot of what we can do or can't do or don't do or do is all about mindset. And it's whether or not you have the mindset that you're going to be successful at whatever it is you do. That winning culture, that winning desire to be the best at whatever it is that you do, whether it's a sporting game or whether it's whatever job you have or your relationship or your hobby, whatever it is. I think you got to have that mindset that I'm going to be the best. And my father kind of drove that into me as a kid. Growing up, he had this thing called the 75% rule. And he used to tell me, son, if you can't do something better than 75% of the people doing it, then you need to do one of two things. You either need to figure out how to get better at it, or you need to go find something else to do, because obviously it doesn't matter to you. And I lived by that. And some would argue I took it to about the 95% rule. As that was always, I want to win. I want to be the best at whatever I do. I don't care if I'm playing old maid with my 10-year-old granddaughter. I want to win. Okay. And if you don't want to win, I don't want you on my team. So I think it's the mindset. If you can develop that mindset that you're going to be the best at whatever you do, I don't care if you're sweeping floors, be the best floor sweeper there is. You got to develop that mindset that you're going to be the best at whatever it is you do.
Absolutely. Doc C, thoughts?
Yeah, well said, Oak. And a couple of things that Shaun mentioned earlier about goals, and it reminds me a lot of Viktor Frankl's book, Life Without Meaning. And he always highlighted the importance of having a purpose in life. He was the Nazi prison camp survivor, and he believes that was what helped him get through surviving the prison camp, was the ability to continue to think, what was he going to do when he got out of prison? He said everybody else who was in that cell with him died, and they were too busy worrying about what was going to happen to them. And he kept focusing on, what am I going to do when I get out of here? What am I going to do when I get out of here? And it's one of the big things for a lot of people. They don't have goals sometimes in their life necessarily. They don't have a purpose. And it goes all the way back to what you originally said, back to service. And having a purpose doesn't have to be necessarily that, but that's definitely one of the contributing factors. To the video, it was interesting because he said, I have to feel perfect. And that's, to me, it's funny because I have to call out when something is not a feeling. That's not a feeling, it's a belief. So it'd be interesting to see what that individual views as perfect in their belief system, because that's usually what that's meaning. A feeling would be different, would be anger, excitement, fear. So it'd be interesting to see what that would be if you ask somebody, what do you mean feel perfect? How does that look to you? The confidence aspect is one of the things they found now, that it's much more powerful than self-esteem. We've heard self-esteem for years, right? Everybody, you need better self-esteem. And then they realize, no, just because I feel good about myself doesn't mean I actually can do certain things. And self-efficacy is the concept of being able to, believing that you can do things. And I think that's where it comes down to the confidence level, right? The ability to believe that I can do certain things in life. And that's really important. Can you overcome losing your job? Can you overcome somebody cheating on you? Can you overcome striking out? Whatever it is, can you overcome it? We go way back to the cowboy again on the concept of getting up. But self-efficacy is huge, because if you don't have self-efficacy, you're not getting up necessarily because you don't believe you can do it. We saw that with Rocky. Remember when he yelled, "People can change" and whatever. Initially, she said, and he said, "No, people can't change." So
Yeah,
I'll leave it on that
absolutely.
note.
Absolutely. Shaun, thoughts?
Who was that coach? I don't know. Who is it?
I'd have
Any
to look it
idea?
up.
Was it like the world's best coach or something? I don't know. I don't know who it is, but I'm a longtime coach, so I know a thing or two about coaching, I suppose. And here's what I've learned: I like to work with people who like to win. And it doesn't mean that they're going to win,
No.
not at all. It just means that I like to work with people who like to win. And if they show up on my front doorstep not wanting to win, well, I then have a decision. I either convince them that wanting to win is cool, or I get rid of them. And so it's as simple as that.
Mhm.
And by the way, wanting to win somehow nowadays has turned into a negative rather than a positive. And screw you, anyone who thinks that, because it's good to be a winner, baby. It really is. And it's good to want to win, baby. And it doesn't matter if you ever win or not. The idea that you are striving to be a winner is a game changer, is a life changer. And so for anyone who's fallen down and got dusty for their first time and is wondering what to do next, frickin' stand up, because that's what makes you a winner. And that simple action is the example of the rest of your life. If you pursue it, if you believe that you're now shaping your life as a winner, losers lay down and stay dusty. Winners stand up, beat the dust off of them, and then go kick some ass. Be a winner.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sean, and it compounds on itself. Every time you do that and you get back up and you do better, then it just compounds on itself. And it really is the desire to win, because you're not going to win every time. That's not life. That's fantasy land. You're not going to win every time, but the will to win and the will to prepare to win are the two keys that separate the great people, the great people who are successful, and the people who are just okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's quite interesting. One of the things that I do with my boys when they have meltdowns or they're really struggling through something, and I just get on your feet. Once you're on your feet, you can start figuring out stuff. But if you let yourself fall and you just stay in that little ball, a little curled up on the ground, you're not going to go anywhere from there. You got to be on your feet to get to move. Now we are just about at time here, so I want to get some final thoughts, and then we can shut her down for the afternoon. But I just wanted to say thank you guys. So Carlos, Oak, Shaun, great conversation today. This has been awesome. Thank you guys so much. Let's get some final thoughts on anything that we've covered over today, or any just things that are still bubbling in the back of your head. Doxy, what do you got?
I'll wrap up with a quick anecdote and then a comment, a question for Shaun. But the anecdote will be this guy who was a father of two children. They were young, 3 and 5, lost his job, but didn't quit. He had to take care of his family. So he ended up working 4 jobs for 9 months. He would go in at 7 a.m. on a Friday, and he would go back to sleep on Saturday night at around 5 and get up again at 11 to go back to work again through Sunday. He was working about 80 hours a week, but he had to do it. And that to me shows a sign of somebody who can endure hardship and doesn't quit and continues to push forward in a different setting. Again, just to kind of give you a different setting of heroes as well out there. The fathers that we know, we never hear about, that maybe work 3 jobs to be able to provide for their family, to keep everything afloat. And they have to do it. And it's a great story, I think, a lot of times. And for Shaun, it's interesting. I'm assuming he's not a fan of the 11th place ribbon, I guess, from what he was commenting earlier. But thank you again for the opportunity, Chance and Shaun.
Absolutely. Always good having you on here. Oak, you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, I want to follow up on something that talked about a little bit earlier, in that you have to decide that you're in charge of your life, that you're not a victim, that you are going to take charge of where you want to go and how you're going to get there. And one of my heroes, one of my favorite generals, General Colin Powell, who's still the most impressive man I ever met in person, he always used to say, if you let other people make decisions for you, then don't be disappointed when you don't get what you want. And I think that's the key. You got to figure out what you want and then figure out how to get there. And then, like Carlos said, you got to have those goals that are taking you down that path that are going to get you there. But you got to make that decision. Nobody else can make it for you.
Absolutely. Shaun, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I do. And so taking it right down to the individual level. So now we're not a team. Now we're not a tribe. We're not a clan. We're not a combined armed forces unit. We're just ourselves, just me, Shaun. And so, Doc, you talked about a guy who was working 4 jobs for his family. Well, Shaun, not having a family at one point in his young life, when I got out of the military, I was, doing that computer system engineering thing. And there was a point in my life where I was writing that book where I was doing about 120 plus hours a week of work. And why was I doing it? Because I like to win, man. I like to win for me. And so sometimes we externalize our win state, our win condition. If I can just feed my family for the rest of the week, that's a win. It sure is. It sure is. I'm not creating a polarizing statement when I say that we have to win for ourselves, sometimes first. And so before a family, I want to win, and I want to win big. I want to understand what it feels to win. I want to understand the cost to win. I want to understand the cost of failure on the way to win. As a single person, I want to understand winning before I get a family. But that's not always the case. Sometimes a family comes along, you don't understand these things. Well, it should never freaking stop, man. You should be pursuing winning with your family as your kids grow up, as things go sideways, as you lose your job, whatever the case is. You've got to hang on to something for yourself, as well as externalizing it through all the proxies around you to obligate you to win. You should just want to win. And if you don't want to win for yourself, if up till now you've been trying to win for everyone else around you, take a big deep breath. In fact, enter into box breathing and sit down and think about, when was the last time you wanted to win for you? Just you. That's where I'm going to leave it.
I really like that. I don't have a lot to add to that because it was awesome, and you guys really hit the nail on the head of everything I wanted to talk about. But I have a comment here from KH. He jumped in here a little while ago, and this is what I'm going to finish off with because I think it's great. It's leadership in the storm builds trust, and you come to know you'll be okay in the storm. I think that is key to everything. It's not just about leadership of other people. It's not just about leadership of your tribe. It is internal leadership in the storm builds internal trust to come to know that you'll be okay in that storm. And so, again, I want to thank you guys. This has been an awesome conversation. So as we continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see you all next week. Chimo, everybody.
Chimo.